Well, welcome back to the introductory session on eViews. In this session, what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about more about series and exactly what their purpose is and how to create series and how to sort of manipulate series within eViews. So why don't we just go back to our Excel sheet and essentially start from that point, create a new work file, and then I'll talk you through that process. Okay, so the first step is to return back to Excel, and I've already selected the area containing the Fiji data. And just to show you, basically, I've selected it from A1 all the way down to the range containing all the data. So I'm going to do a copy, just copy that area, and then come back to eViews, the eViews startup interface, and just simply say paste as a new work file. Now, this is slightly different from the way that we normally did it the previous time, but notice the familiar sheet up here, which essentially the dialog box, it's showing you already that it's interpreted that what was on the clipboard, and now it's going to create a work file for you. And there it is, essentially a new work file containing the variables that we should be familiar with by now. Now, you'll see some common, well, objects, if you like, or they're usually called objects in eViews. Firstly, it's the beta coefficient vector, and there's also the resid vector. But the remaining series that we see there are essentially called, they are actually called series objects. Now, the purpose of a series object in eViews is very, very simple. It's essentially a container for a single unit of time series data, whether it be GDP, money supply, or the inflation rate. So that's its fundamental purpose. And like any object, it has attributes and it has methods associated with it. Now, the first thing you have to get used to in eViews is how to create an object, and there are many ways of doing that. But perhaps the easiest way I find to create an object is simply to type the series command, and we'll just call it series ABC. And notice that immediately what eViews does is create a new object, series object, with the appropriate icon, the little yellow icon with what looks like a time trend on it. And that's essentially a new container for a new set of time series data. Now, if I double click on that, you'll notice that when I open it, it's empty, and that's exactly how it should be. Now, the other way in which to create a series object is to go to Object, New Object, and simply select the series object down here and give it a name. And once again, I'll just give it a name called ABC1_1 and press OK. And now we go down and we see immediately that we have another object, another series object ready for time series data. Okay, so now when you double click on an object, a series object, you'll notice it has all these NA terms in there. Well, that's just missing data. And obviously what we want to do is populate the object with appropriate data. So what I'll do to show you how to do that, what we do, we can go back to Excel, if you will, and just select for Fiji the data from 1970 to 2013, copy that, and then come across to eViews, the ABC object, place your cursor in the 1970 position and press Edit, and right click and just simply say Paste. And immediately we have, using the cut and paste operation, basically populated that series ABC with the Fijian data on real GDP. Now, of course, notice that actually in that operation, the data is saved immediately to the work file. So if we double click on it, it comes back again exactly as we left it. And if we work our way down, you'll see that there are NA operations down the bottom. Okay, so that's essentially the easiest way to create a series in eViews, and you can repeat that process any number of times. Now, the one thing you need to notice with eViews is, as I mentioned, series are an object. They have methods and attributes. So what happens is that whenever you're looking at a particular object, eViews adapts its menus to reflect the fact that you're operating basically with an object. And you'll notice here that when we open up the series and and can actually look at the data, you'll see on the menu screen now basically the menu tabs have actually adapted for the series that you're working on. And so let's just explain further on that point is that, for example, the View tab now basically allows you to implement certain methods here that are relative, which are specifically pertinent to the series. So, for example, you might want to graph the data, and you just select View, Graph, and press OK, and you immediately get a graph of the series. So that's one example. You might also, if you open it up, then go back to View, Descriptive Statistics, and we can do a simple stats table, which gives you the mean, median, and maximum, minimum of the series, and various other attributes and the number of non-missing observations being used. And as you can see, essentially, it offers you many, lots of procedures basically for you to analyze the stylized facts associated with that series, or to draw inferences perhaps about the trend or breaks or whatever you might be interested in. Okay, so you can see you can also easily go back to the spreadsheet view, adjust the sample if you wish in terms of removing missing values, and the easiest way to see that is if I click on the sample. Well, actually, I need to. Sorry, if I change the sample to 1990 to 2015. And now I toggle between samples. What it's doing is it's toggling between the current sample and the range, So you can see here that the series object is a very powerful object, and its basic purpose is to keep together a single unit of data on an economic concept. In this case, it happened to be real GDP. Okay, so that's two basic ways of generating a series. The third way of generating a series in eViews is to use what's called the generate statement. Now, in eViews, they have a very powerful mathematical expression parser that enables you to create new series from existing series. And that command is actually, let me get rid of this particular window. That command, let me put the sample back to the range. So I'm going, oops, I didn't spell too well there, but so I'll readjust that. And now I'm going to use what's called the generate command to calculate the growth rate of real GDP, and we'll just call it G of GDP of Fiji, and I'll just use the dlog function for the difference of the logs, and of course we have to just point to our GDP of Fiji in this case, and press, sorry, I didn't spell that correctly. I just have to point to the real GDP data and take the dlog of it. So notice here is that what I've got is on the left-hand side is the new name of the series, which in this case will be G of GDP. And on the right-hand side, this is the function dlog, which is the first difference of logarithms. And it's applied to our GDP of Fiji. And if I press enter, a new object, series object is created, which contains the growth rate of real GDP for Fiji. And of course, if I simply say view and then graph, if I simply click on that, I get a growth rate of the real GDP in Fiji. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this session. The basic purpose of this session was to show you the various ways in which you can create series in eViews, and that happened to be basically using the command line, the menu option, or the generate statement. You'll make use of these commands quite often throughout this course on forecasting. Thank you.